Now it is my honor to kick off the showstopper with Sam Yang of Sam Does Arts. He's going to share with us tips and insights on launching an art career by building a social media presence.
What's up guys? In this video, I'm going to be talking to you about how to grow on social media and how it's helped me launch my art career. I want to give you guys some tips and pointers here and there about things to look out for. And I think this video is going to be very helpful for people who are looking to pursue an independent creator kind of career, as well as for people who might be in the professional industry who want to leverage social media to showcase their work. A little bit about me. I started my Instagram account back in 2018 and never really gained too much traction. I posted fan art for a good while, and over the past year and a half or so, I've been able to get from 15,000 followers all the way up to 1.2 million that you see today. So all of the learning experiences that I've had on social media are still very fresh in my mind, and I want to share some of that with you guys, because whether you like it or not, social media is a huge part of being an artist nowadays for most people, and it's something that we've all thought about at one point or another. So I have a few key pieces of advice that I think helped me out the most, things that I wish I knew about when I started on social media. Tip number one, you got to prioritize your own growth as an artist over your growth on social media. This is something that I always preach to everybody who asks me for advice. This is the one thing that I think is really not talked about enough, especially in the social media scene where people are so focused on engagement. It's always engagement, engagement, engagement. How many likes? What's the engagement ratio? What is my subscriber count? What is my follower increase? There's too much of this looking at the numbers and not enough of looking within yourself. It sounds extremely cheesy, but this is the number one tip that I can give to anybody who's looking to pursue a career on social media. You have to remember that when you strip everything down, when you take out all the fluff, people follow you for the quality of your content. That's it. So if the quality of your work is not at the highest level that it could be, you're not going to get followers and engagement just by trying new things, like for example, posting at a different time, posting at a different frequency. None of that is going to help you if you don't have the foundation of quality. From my experience on social media, it's very hard to block out the distraction of looking at the engagement, thinking what are other people going to like. This is something that's always going to be in your subconscious. It's something that you're always going to think about when you're drawing, but you just got to work to make sure that you're not letting that take a higher priority than your own growth as an artist. So here's my personal story, okay? Back when I started my account, I was doing a lot of fan art. I was focusing on characters. I was trying to look for characters that I think would be very popular. I was looking for, do I do a white background or do I do a colored background? Do I do light or dark? What gets more likes? What gets shared more? What gets more follows? I was focused on that. And I was thinking, okay, what's the next character I could do that's really popular that most people are gonna know? And that's something that I focused on for, a couple of years, and I was pretty stagnant. But what really clicked for me was when I decided, okay, you know what, screw this. I'm going to focus on myself, on my own learning. I know I've got a long way to go in my own skill set, so I am going to work on this, and I'm going to try to express myself in an authentic way. And that's where you get the paintings that I have today. That's where people really are able to connect with it. I really pour my heart out into these. I put a lot of feeling and emotions behind them, basing it off of, just very raw human emotions and experiences. And it's just stuff that I care about. And in the process, I'm also learning. I'm trying to build up my skill set because I know I'm not the best artist that I can be. I know that I could get better. And that's something that I want to work on. And it just so happens that people connect with that way more than the artificial attempts at boosting engagement. Long story short, don't do it for the gram, do it for you. Don't let nobody tell you what to do. Here's a snapshot of your priorities, okay? Growing as an artist, growing on social media. This comes first. I think this leads perfectly into our second point, talking about prioritizing yourself. You have to also invest in yourself. I think if art is something that you want to take seriously, this is something that you want to do every single day, and this is something that you're gonna make money off of and make a living off of, you have to invest in yourself. And for me, when I started doing this, I was a broke university student, so it was very hard for me, but I decided to get myself a Wacom Cintiq Pro 24. This is a painful memory, but it basically wiped out my entire bank account. But I told myself this is what I wanted to do, and I wanted to do it well. So I had to invest in my equipment and my setup to make it as comfortable for me as possible, to make me actually sit down here and want to work. Now, do you need top of the line equipment like this? I don't think so. Okay, you can start off with something very basic, but the point is, if there's anything in your setup that is holding you back, right? If your computer crashes every 20 minutes using Photoshop, invest in yourself. This is something that you want to do. This is something that eventually is going to pay off. Take the L for now. It's going to pay off later, hopefully. But this is also one of the things that I just personally learned from this journey. It's that you really have to invest in the things that you're going to be doing a lot. You know, I bought an expensive camera that I should not have been able to afford, bought an expensive microphone that I should not have been able to afford. But you know, after putting in countless hours of work, these things have all paid themselves off. And I'm so glad that my past self decided to invest in my present self. And I've been personally working with Wacom products for the entirety of my digital art career. So if you look at any of my YouTube videos, I'm either working on this big boy or I have them in the background. And honestly, it's an absolute honor getting to know the team at Wacom and being able to work with them. It's like a childhood dream come true, you know? The point is, if there's anything in your setup that's holding you back, whether it be your drawing tablet, your table, your computer, your camera, or your microphone, invest in yourself. Make sure that you give yourself the opportunity to succeed. And that brings us to point number 3, which is maintaining consistency. I think this is one of the hardest things to do about being a social media artist, because you're working on your own schedule. So it's like you can technically do whatever you want. You can technically post whenever you want. But in order to actually become successful, you have to do it consistently. I think consistency plays a huge part in separating the people who drop out midway through and the people who are successful. Now, when I say consistency, I'm mostly referring to consistency in your schedule. You have to hold yourself accountable to a good schedule. Okay, you have to find something that works for you. Do you want to post every 2 days? Do you want to post every 3 days? Do you want to upload a video onto YouTube every single week or every other week? Find something that works for you and run with it, and make sure that you are holding yourself accountable for the times that you set for yourself. For example, when I upload a YouTube video, I'm currently doing every Tuesday, and I always upload at 11:45 a.m. Eastern time. Now, is there any rhyme or reason for that time? Not really. Does it give me higher engagement? Not really. It's just the time that I picked for myself that allows me to really hold myself accountable. Having that 11:45 mark there gives me a solid deadline that I could work towards. It's just something that I use to stay disciplined and keep myself on schedule. On Instagram, I'm posting every 3 days, and I'm posting at exactly 12:10 p.m. Now, does that mean you guys have to post at that time and on the specific days? Not really. It's just something that I kind of fell into. It's a schedule that I just made up for myself. Sometimes you forget. Sometimes life gets busy, but having the schedule here, you know, writing it down in your calendar or setting an alarm for it, it allows you to maintain it. No room for excuses, and we got no room for laziness here. But you also want to take care of your mental health. So if something is really, really stressing you out, it's probably time to rework that schedule. You know, find something a little bit more manageable so that you're not stressed out all the time trying to meet a deadline to a point where it actually has a negative effect on the quality of your work. And speaking of consistency, there is one thing that I think really negatively impacts a lot of people's schedules, and that is low engagement on your work. This is something that you really got to work with yourself on. You got to play some mental gymnastics to get over these hurdles, because it's tough. Sometimes you put up a post and it does absolutely horribly. It just completely flops, okay? And you thought it was gonna do well. This is gonna happen all the time. This is gonna happen over and over and over again. You just gotta come to a point where you accept this and move on. You gotta really toughen yourself up so that every time you stumble, you pick yourself back up. You have to understand that in the grand scheme of things, this is just one small stumble. This is not something that's going to derail your entire art career. The fact that this one post or this one video didn't do as well as you expected it to. It's important to pick yourself back up, get right back at it, be consistent, and stay on that schedule so that you can come back and slap that flop in the face. I'm promoting violence, but what can you do? So having covered those points, I think there is another one that was really important to me personally, that will really round this whole thing out, and that is setting your goals. Okay, you gotta have goals. You got to know what you're working towards. For me personally, my goals were that I eventually want this social media thing to grow large enough that I could support myself. And that goal is something you would call a long-term goal or a stretch goal. It's something that is not going to happen in a very short period of time. It's going to take a lot of work, and it's something that you can strive towards. The benefit of having a goal like this is you can kind of work backwards. So for me personally, I knew I wanted to do this. So I looked at some other artists who were already doing what I wanted to do. I took notes on how they make money, how they generate content, what kind of content do they do, how often do they make their content, and what kind of work they do in general. And I was able to kind of reverse engineer that into a plan for myself, so that I knew, okay, at a certain point, I would probably want to sell some prints. At a certain point, I would probably want to teach people on Patreon. At a certain point, maybe I'll make an art book. You know, things like that you could implement into your journey by working backwards from your end goal so that you can eventually reach that goal. And the thing is, having a goal is just great for your motivation. When I was a much smaller account, I found sometimes when I would make posts and it would get low engagement, and I'd be like, okay, why am I doing this? I'm not even making any money, but I'm putting so much effort into it. You know, it's very discouraging. It could be very unmotivating, but you know, sometimes you just got to remind yourself, okay, like this is what I'm doing it for. Like at the end of the day, that's the goal that I want to reach. And every single thing that I do right now, whether it's a success or whether it flops, is just another stepping stone to the eventual goal that I want to reach. So these are the main tips that I can offer you guys for people who are trying to get onto social media, whether you are a independent creator or a professional artist who wants to use social media. These are some of the things that I wish I knew when I started trying to grow on social media. Well, now you guys know them. So I hope they make life a little bit easier for you guys. But honestly, guys, I think social media is an amazing thing to leverage if you're an artist. You know, it opens so many possibilities. For me personally, I didn't know anybody in the art industry. I didn't have a way into the art industry. There was no other way for me to get my work recognized by people other than posting on social media. And now that I have done this, I have grown a presence on social media. Now people kind of know who I am. I've met so many people that I otherwise would have never been able to talk to. You know, like other big creators that back then I would have never thought I would even speak to ever in my life. And you know, here we are, we're just talking to each other, you know, getting to know each other. And it's actually opened so many doors for me, you know, with new opportunities to work on big projects, really exciting things, and just getting to know other people in the industry as well, and kind of getting the inside scoop on a lot of these things. So social media is definitely something that is a very viable thing to use if you are an artist or a creative of any kind. It's a great platform for you to market yourself, for you to get yourself out there, for people to know you, and for you to potentially reach new opportunities. And for me personally, you know, prioritizing myself, investing in myself, and staying consistent with this thing and getting to where I am today is something that I'm super thankful for my past self for doing. This is the dream job for me. And if your dream job is working as a content creator, or your dream job is working in the industry but having a good social media presence on the side, you know, like an Ethan Becker, Aaron Blaze, Snatty, Ilya Kushinov, all the professionals who happen to leverage social media on the side to do other fun projects for themselves. There's just so many possibilities with this. And if that is something that really speaks to you, you are that person who you look at that and you're like, that's my dream job, go for it. That's all I gotta say. You're not going to regret trying. What you're gonna regret is not giving it a shot. That's it for this video that I made specifically for Lightbox Expo 2021. So a big thank you to Bobby Chu for inviting me to Lightbox this year, and a big thank you to Wacom for reaching out to me, getting to know me, and just being cool people who make really cool products that have helped me so much on my artistic journey. So with that being said, I hope this video shed some light on social media and everything to do with social media. I hope this makes things a little bit less overwhelming for you guys, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of you guys on Instagram or YouTube or Twitter or whatever it is that you guys want to use. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you guys on the next one. I still remember the first day that the Cintiq Pro 24 was shipped to me. I was like, what have I done? You know, I'm looking at my bank account, looking at this, looking back at my bank account, looking at this. I was like, this thing better work out, Sam. Otherwise, you're kind of screwed. It did work out. Bet on yourself, guys. Invest in yourself. Believe in yourself. You got this.
All right, Sam, you already have your fans asking questions. People really enjoyed that pre-recorded video you made for them, and they have been filling up the YouTube chat with questions. I have a question to start us off with, and then I'm going to start giving you the questions from the chat.
Sounds good.
So here's my question from the Wacom side. We watched that pre-record video and you had a beautiful Cintiq Pro 24 in the frame, but here I see you're using an Intuos Pro Medium. Tell me a little bit about your Wacom setup and why you use both.
Yeah, okay. So basically, first of all, hello guys. Thank you all for joining, and I'm really happy to be here with you guys. But first of all, I use the Cintiq for like my main setup because it's got obviously a beautiful big 4K screen. And that's something that I draw on almost every single day. It's something that I really enjoy working on. But sometimes, when you're looking at your hand up close, when you're drawing on a screen, you can only pinpoint your eye to a point that's really, really close to your face. So I find that, my eyes get a little bit tired after a long period of drawing. That's why I asked Wacom to send me over a Intuos, and this is really good because now I can view my screen from like a really nice distance with good posture, so that I don't have to look down at my hand, but I can also do the exact same kind of work. Like obviously people are mostly concerned about like the hand-eye coordination here, but I think it was actually really easy to get used to. I picked this up in like, I think maybe a couple days, and now it's working really, really nicely for me. So that's my setup.
Cool. All right. Annika had our first question. What tips can you give to someone who didn't go to art school?
For someone who didn't go to art school, I'm assuming you mean like you didn't go to post-secondary for art school. And I didn't go to post-secondary art school either. I just went to high school. The most of my art education ended in high school. So I think the best tip that I can give you is to like seek out resources and things that will actually help you in your learning. So don't just kind of, this is something that I always like to tell people, don't just draw from your imagination. Actually try to seek out ways to improve your work. Try to look at what different artists are doing. What are some of the professional artists doing? How are people studying? And try to draw from that. Find whatever is working for you. And you really just got to make sure that you're constantly trying to learn. I think that's the biggest thing, because there's no school to force you to.
Okay, here is a good one. Now, I hear you in your video, you were talking a lot about overcoming low engagement. I think that this question is related to that. It says, how can you stop caring about what others think? I'm confident in my art, but when it comes to captions and stories on Instagram, I'm too anxious to put myself out there.
Right. I think that's a very common problem that a lot of people run into, is just thinking, like overthinking a lot of this stuff. But I think you honestly just gotta take a step back and look at it in the grand scheme of things, right? Like this is just gonna be one post, this is gonna be one caption. The thing is, most people who actually see that post are gonna see it for maybe 3 seconds, and they're gonna move on to the next thing. They're not gonna remember everything that you said. They're not gonna be like, why didn't you add a comma in the middle of that sentence? I'm so mad right now and I'm never going to forget about this. No one's ever going to do that to you. So like sometimes it's okay to just let that go a little bit and just tell yourself it's okay. This is just one post in the grand scheme of things. It's not going to be the end of the world if this one doesn't do well, or if I mess up the spelling of something. It's totally fine.
Well, you have a lot of fans asking a lot of questions, Sam.
That's great. I love that.
Here's a good one, and I know this is one near and dear to your heart. How do you improve when you're teaching yourself?
Okay, that's a very good one, actually. How do you improve when you're teaching yourself? I know it can be hard to actually see any improvement in your work, especially when you're not being forced to do anything. But I think the really important thing is you got to step out of your comfort zone. For example, like there are times where, I'm doing something and I'm like, man, the environment on this piece is just not turning out right. I just don't think I got it for this. And then what I would do is I would actually go and look up some environments, and I would do some practice work. You know, I would put in some work into like harder, more complex environments so that I feel a little bit more comfortable with it as I go forward. So I think it's all about just challenging yourself. You know, there have been times where I'm like, the expression on this character is just not looking right. I don't know why. And then I would go and I would study like how other artists do it. And I would look at like some actual photographs. I would look at references, and I would just like challenge myself to actually try to get it right. And you don't have to produce a masterpiece every single time you set your pen onto the paper. You just got to make sure that you are pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. That's the biggest thing that I think you got to do when it comes to actually improving when you're teaching yourself.
Sam, I can tell that a lot of people asking questions or have been following you since day one.
Yes.
Yes, because we have a question here. What is your advice for creating original art versus fan art? I know you started in fan art and then transitioned into your original works. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Original versus fan art. I mean, fan art is, I think if you want to make fan art, like coming from my personal experience of having done it before, like you want to make sure that you are passionate about what you're actually drawing. You want to make sure that that's something that like you're actually genuinely interested in outside of your artistic life. And I think original art, I think it gives me personally a lot more freedom, you know, because I can just do whatever I want. I could try to like literally capture a feeling that I felt earlier in the day. You know, I could literally try to represent that in an art piece. And I think original art gives you way more connection and intimacy with the pieces that you're making. That's part of the reason why I decided to actually transition from doing fan art to doing original art. And I think, you know, just making that leap and experiencing that kind of change where my work became more intimate with myself and more genuine and more authentic, you know, people tend to connect with that too.
Christina says, what are some tips to get your post to reach more people?
To be honest with you, I'm still figuring this one. I'm still figuring this one out. The Instagram algorithm is something that, you know, people always make videos, people always talk about it, but it's something that you can't figure out unless you're the one who made the algorithm. So it's just, I think the best way to actually, it's like I said in the video that I recorded previously, the best way to actually get yourself out there is to just put out the best quality work that you possibly can. You know, instead of letting the noise and the distraction of you got to do reels, you got to do this and that, instead of letting that just get to your head and force you into a direction that you're not super passionate about, just make sure that you're putting out the best quality work that you can, because at the end of the day, like I said in the video, people follow you for the quality of your work. And that's like that's the gist of it. That's the core of everything.
Sam, I noticed, you know, here at Wacom, we work with a ton of artists all of the time, and some very rare, wonderful artists can draw and talk at the same time. And I see you can draw and talk at the same time. Any tips for mastering that particular skill?
Drawing and talking at the same time. I mean, okay, like I think if you practice enough and you know your subjects well enough, and you don't have to just rack your brain to understand where to put certain things, you can start to kind of almost turn your brain off a little bit as you're drawing, and you can use it for other things. So I think that's what's helping me out a lot right now. It's just tons of practice and getting used to drawing, and you know, being comfortable. You know, I am a little bit nervous, like what if I mess up right now, but I'm relatively comfortable overall.
All right. TT is anime says, how did you grow your Instagram within such a short time frame?
Dude, I ask myself the same question all the time, but to be honest with you, I don't know, like something, I think what clicked for me, or at least like this is what I think clicked for me, is like I started getting on like a really consistent schedule, but not only the consistent schedule, I also decided to like start doing pieces that kind of, they're really, they represent like a feeling, they represent like emotions. They're just very genuine, and a lot of them are very authentic, and I always am challenging myself on my page. Like if you scroll down, you're going to see me do a lot of different studies, whatever things I might be working on. And I think that's something that people connect with, and seeing that improvement over time, I think is also something that really inspires people to join you on the journey. So I think just a lot of consistency and working hard at your weaknesses, and also expressing yourself in an authentic way. That about sums it up, I think.
Sam, I noticed you have a lot of partnerships with other artists and you tend to reach out and chat with other artists. How do you start networking within the art community?
Networking in the art community, obviously I'm coming from a really unique perspective, because I didn't really know anybody going into this, right? So everyone's pretty much new to me. And to be honest, I don't think I reach out to too many people. Sometimes, it's really cool. Like I would make a video, and then an artist that I've been following for a long time would leave a comment. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like you noticed me? That is crazy. And then, that kind of like breaks the ice. And then the next thing you know, I reply to their Instagram story, and then we just talk a little bit about this and that. And then, like in the case of like some other people, we might get into a collab, we might, talk a little bit more. But it's a very natural process. I think when you start putting yourself out there more, you're also giving other people the chance to actually find you and reach you and connect with you.
We have a couple questions from a few different people about platforms. One is, tell us some tips about starting a YouTube art channel. And then somebody else is asking about DeviantArt, and if you use it, what are your thoughts? So maybe you could take a few minutes and talk through the different platforms you use, offer some tips, and give some ideas for people who are just starting to grow their social media presence.
Yeah, I can go through some of the platforms. I think YouTube is very tricky, because you're trying to entertain people and hold their attention. And honestly, YouTube is like one of the most unpredictable platforms, because the videos that you least expect to do well will do very well. And the ones that do really well are, like some of the ones that don't do too well were the ones that you expected to do really well. YouTube is very unpredictable. So and it also ties in a lot of different skill sets. Like you have to make sure that you know how to express yourself, how to convey your feelings or your points, your talking points to the audience in a way that is clear and concise. And you also got to get used to talking to the camera. So if you do have like a setup at home, I'd recommend just trying it out. Just try to shoot a couple of videos. I think YouTube was very nerve-wracking for me to first get started and put my face out there. But once you get started, it's actually not as bad. You just got to kind of get used to talking to a camera, editing the videos and all that. I don't personally use DeviantArt. I used to, but right now, like I don't think there's I don't want to talk bad about the platform, but I just don't think there's enough engagement on there to warrant using it right now. That's why I'm like mostly sticking to Instagram, but Instagram and YouTube are like pretty much like the main ones that I like to stick to.
Okay. I am hearing from my friends behind the scenes that the chat is going crazy and people are loving all of this advice.
I love it.
Trota Mundi has a couple of good questions here. How do you deal with the struggle? Does the pandemic affect your income? How do you overcome when there is not enough income to pay for the basics?
So I got really lucky with this, to be honest with you guys. I only graduated from university 5 months ago, so back in April. So I didn't have to deal with the fact that I wasn't making enough money from doing this job. I was actually technically a student, so I got very lucky with that, and I never had to actually deal with that. And I think the pandemic actually, it wasn't necessarily bad for me, because none of the stuff that I do is taking place in person. So I could work just fine at home, and I could put the stuff on social media platforms at home. So it didn't really affect me too much negatively. So I don't think there's too much advice that I have on that.
Okay, this is a good question from Wiper ZZ. And when we see a lot at Wacom, which is how much does a pen tablet really affect your drawing style. So let me read Wiper ZZ's actual question. From whom do you actually get those eye styles, nose styles, and body styles? And is that really, does your drawing tablet really make a difference?
So my stylization and my the way I draw things, I just take from a lot of artists who inspire me. You know, I can't just say one artist who I base everything off of. There are a lot of different ones. You know, when I first started out, I was looking a lot at Ross Draws. You know, there's Snatty, a lot of people who I really looked up to, and I take different elements from their work. And like it's really, my work is a combination of all the great people who came before me. It's like I base a lot of this stuff off of Western animation as well as Japanese anime. So I can't pinpoint a single style. It's really just something that I've been kind of just gathering sources and information from all kinds of different people and just putting it together and just making something that's my own. You know, it's like a combination of stylized and realistic. And what was the second part of the question? I forgot.
Well, I think the question is, how does a tablet?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how does a tablet affect your style? I don't think a tablet actually affects your drawing style. It's just more so like it's, if you get a good quality tablet, it makes working a lot easier. And I used to work on a 1080p screen, and you know, it's just a very small thing. Sometimes I would put down like a thin line, like a 4-pixel line, and it would be like I can barely see it because it's a 1080p, and it's not displaying the line properly. But when I move on to my 4K Cintiq, it's like that line is super crisp. It's just quality of life, things like that. It doesn't actually change the style and the way you draw, but it makes you want to draw. And I think that also plays a big part in helping you actually grow as an artist.
Okay. We have a good question from Renaissance Girls. I want to say no. The answer to this is no, but I'm not a professional artist.
Okay.
You have to have a thick skin. Is it okay to ask for feedback and critique on social media platforms?
Like from your audience?
From your audience, yeah.
I mean, you could, but what you got to realize is people who comment and interact with you on social media platforms, they're just, you never know who's actually behind that keyboard. So a lot of times there are people who are just not necessarily qualified. They don't really know what they're talking about, giving you advice. So you got to take a lot of this stuff with a grain of salt. And just being on social media, you're also going to get just all kinds of people saying all kinds of things. So you got to understand that, they're just people. They're all kinds of different people. And I don't think I would recommend getting critique and taking it too seriously from a random group of people online, unless you know them.
So I think the flip side to that then is, how do you get critique if you're not in a situation, you're not in a class or you're not in a group? How do you get that critique then?
I think a really good way that you could do this is if you have a community of artists that you follow, if you have people that you interact with on a regular basis. I personally know other artists who we're in Discords together, and if we're in Discord servers together, and if anything, if we need anything, if anything, we're not sure about anything, we go to each other. So it's these are people that you kind of know, and you kind of trust, and you kind of respect their opinion. It's not just random people. So you could look at the network of people that you have on your social media accounts and the people that you know there, and see if you guys can't strike up a conversation and take it a little bit further and start doing like a little support group.
You have some super fans in the chat. I think
Hey guys.
I think Chi Cam is one of them. This person says, not a question, but congrats on partnering with DPR for Shang-Chi. The artwork was amazing.
Oh, yes, that was a really fun project. I worked with, it was fun, but it was very stressful. I worked with 88 Rising to make some of the artist cards for the Shang-Chi album. That was a really cool project.
I am seeing a lot of questions about being paralyzed as you approach the blank screen or paralyzed in your creativity. Do you have any advice on overcoming artist block?
Oh, artist block. Yeah, that is artist block. When I run into it, I think it comes in the form of like, not necessarily I don't know what to draw, but it's just what I'm drawing doesn't turn out the way that I want it to. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. But when that happens, like, I literally just take a step back. I just take myself away from the drawing tablet. I go and do something else. Like, it's hard in the moment because you're like, I got to do this right now. I gotta get a drawing in today. But if you try to force yourself, you're not going to be in the right mindset to create something that's actually going to bring you out of that art block. It might actually dig you in even further. So the best tip that I can give you if you're experiencing some serious art block is just step away from it. Go for a walk, go for a run, go do something nice. And sometimes inspiration is going to come to you when you least expect it. Or watch a YouTube video.
All right. Valerie has a great practical question. Do you suggest we start an art Instagram and keep our personal Instas separate?
Yes, definitely, 100%. Do not post selfies on your art Instagram. I think, I see a lot of people do this, but it's just, if you're thinking about it, like, there are people who see an artwork from you, they follow you, the next thing you know, they're seeing pictures of your face. It's not that your face is not nice. I'm sure you guys all have beautiful faces, but it's just, expectations versus reality, right? Somebody followed you for your artwork, and then now all of a sudden they're getting a glimpse into your personal life. It might not be something that they signed up for. That's part of the reason why I also keep my artwork and my personal stuff completely separate, and I don't post anything like that on my Instagram account because I know what people are there for.
Yo the Boat has a good question. Should you not post your progress on the beginning on social media, or does that help you see how far you've come?
What kind of progress?
I think the question is about, the notion that an artist, when they begin posting, will have a limited skill set, and then as they grow as an artist, their art gets more professional. So basically, should you be documenting these times where your style isn't quite your style yet?
Yeah, I think what did I do to her eye? Oh no. But I think you absolutely should be documenting it, because when I think about it, I look back on some of my old stuff, and I literally, I'm like, wow, I can't believe I put this up. But that's the feeling that you kind of want sometimes. That's the feeling that, when you look back, you're like, wow, I can't believe I did that. I would do so many things differently now. And that, I think, is something that can really motivate you. So I don't think again, you should treat this as something that's for yourself instead of for other people. So even if your art is not at the level that you want it to be, and that's another point, I don't think your art is ever going to be at the level that you want it to be. Even for me, I'm always I could do more, I could do better, I could do this and that. So you're always going to be growing, you're always going to be looking to grow. You might as well put it up there and document it. But just don't expect anything crazy if you are a beginner. It's just.
Okay. So Ryan says that this might be a dumb question, and I don't think it's a dumb question at all. I think it's a really smart question.
No question's a dumb question.
How can you be confident, or how can you develop your confidence while you're doing a brush stroke?
Oh boy. You mean when you're in the middle of a stroke and you're like, oh no, why is it going there?
Well, that could be. I took it to mean basically there are, when you're starting to draw, there are tentative brush strokes, and then there are confident ones. Yes. But answer both ways, Sam.
Well, I think developing confidence in your brushstroke is just you got to understand. You got to understand the connection between your brain and your hand, and that's going to come with just tons of practice, repetition, over and over. I know a lot of beginners have the tendency to, when you're drawing a line, you might, instead of drawing it like that, you might be scratchy, and you might draw it a little bit rough, and just because you're not sure of where to go with your lines, right? But instead of doing that, just force yourself to try to practice that line. Try to practice getting used to letting your hand glide in one single motion, and you're going to get a lot more confident with your lines.
All right, practice. Hippoland says, do we need to post 5 times a day?
Oh no. No. I think there's a limit. Like there's actually a limit, because there is a thing as posting too little. You know, maybe if you post like once every 3 months, people forget about who you are. But there is a thing as posting too much. At least I think, because I used to follow some artists who will not be named. But like, and I would be like, wow, this is amazing. I would see a post on my feed and I'd be like, I'm going to give you a follow. I love this work. And then next thing you know, like every single time I open Instagram, there's a post from them. I'm just like, how many times are you posting? And sometimes they post like 2-3 times a day. And I'm like, this is way too much. Like, I love your work, but I really don't want to see it every single time I open my feed. So try not to do that. You know, I think my sweet spot was like anything longer than once every couple of days. You could try doing once a day, but you know, there's a point where it gets a little bit too much for sure. And it's too much for you, too much work.
Yeah, maybe too much emotional energy too to put your stuff out there. Okay, we have a few questions related to money. So I'm going to ask I'm going to ask 2 of them from 2 different people. One is from Hannah Hayes, and she says, is spending money to boost worth it? And then we have a couple of questions about Patreon. You know, do you use it? Does it work for you? So do you want to talk a little bit about money and spending money and earning money in art?
Yeah, I do. So making money, what did Hannah ask? Sorry, I'm blanking.
That's okay. Hannah says, is spending money to boost your content worth it?
Yes. That depends on you, I think. I mean, you know, I know a lot of people who have tried it. I've tried it myself. Like not recently though, like from in the very early stages. I think usually it's not really worth it. Like, at least to me, I don't think it's really worth it, but it will get your audience to it will get your work to a broader range of audience than you would originally anticipate. But there's also the thing where people just generally tend to dislike sponsored content, but I do know people who find artists that they like through sponsored posts. So it might be worth it for you. You know, you don't really know until you try it out and see how the engagement is on that post. And what's the other question again? Oh, Patreon.
Yeah.
Patreon. Patreon is great. I'm on Patreon and I do like tutorial videos every single month. I put up wallpapers. I put up full-length videos of my drawing process. Shameless plug for my Patreon, guys. Go check it out. We have a Discord. But I think Patreon is a great way for people to actually be able to support you directly. And I know some of the people over at Patreon, and we, you know, interact. You probably see them comment on my posts. They're awesome people. But the thing with that is you got to understand that that is an obligation and a responsibility. If you want to take that on, you got to make sure that you're able to support that, the amount of time that you need to put into it. I think there's definitely a time and a place. Like, you don't want to start a Patreon when you're a relatively small account, like maybe 30 or 20,000 or like, you know, 50,000. You might be putting in a lot of work for not too much that you're getting out of it. At that point, you might be better off putting together like a print shop, putting together some little products that you could sell, because Patreon is something that you need to manage constantly. So that's something to think about. But Patreon, as you get a little bit bigger on social media, definitely, I think it's a great way for artists to actually make money directly and get support from their fans.
I've seen a lot of questions come in about Reels, and I heard you mention them when we first started talking. Yeah. Alyssa says, do artists need to switch to Reels to grow faster in 2021?
So this is a thing. This is the thing that I don't like about like all the social media noise. It's you don't need to switch to Reels to grow faster in 2021. In fact, I think Reels is like very saturated now. Everyone thinks that Reels is how you get seen, but it's really it's really just another thing that Instagram is adding in there, and Instagram just keeps adding in new things. It's not, you don't need to do only reels for your account to get big or anything. Like, it's just, I think still it boils down to the quality of your own work. You know, who are you as an artist? What is your voice as an artist? How do you represent yourself? You know, how do you challenge yourself? How do you expand your skill set? Like, I think all this social media engagement stuff, the reels, like, do I use reels? Do I use this and that? Usually should take a back seat to like your own personal development.
Speaking of your own personal development, Zainab says, could you ask Sam, how much does studying graphic design have an effect on you being good at drawing?
Zero, absolutely zero. In fact, it might set you back a little bit because you're not going to be doing any drawing at all. I think, like, I did graphic design because I was in a position where I was like, okay, I like doing art, I like doing artsy stuff, but how am I going to make a living in the future? You know, so I just decided, you know what, maybe graphic design sounds like the way to go. So I decided to get into that program, and it was a great program, had a great time, but there was zero drawing involved at all. And I had to basically maintain my drawing stuff on the side. So the graphic design is not going to help you when it comes to art. Graphic design is going to help you in graphic design.
Okay. This is a really interesting question from Senny. It says, any tips for posting on Instagram, the canvas size, color, quality? And here's the thing that I'm really interested in too. Should you focus on making art catered to make the feed look good?
Should you make it catered to make the feed look good? I don't think so. Posting on Instagram. So let's talk about like the canvas size first. I use, again, if I remembering this correctly, I use 2400 by 3000 pixels, 300 DPI, and that's just my canvas size. It fits the ratio of Instagram perfectly. And when I export the image, I export it at 45% so that the width of the image is 1080p. And that way Instagram compresses it a little bit less than if your image were to be really big. So that's the size that I post at. But honestly, like anything that scales down to 1080p and matches the ratio of Instagram will do you just fine. You could make the canvas way bigger. I just like to work on a small canvas because my computer is not super powerful. What was the other part of the question?
It was about making the feed look good. And I think that it's also a question about art being marketable and appealing to people and decorative versus what's in your heart to draw.
Right. Okay. So that's so the first part of the question, making the feed look good, I think is not very important at all. Making the individual piece look good is important. The feed comes second, and I think people who visit your feed are not going to like follow you for how good your entire feed looks as a whole. They're going to follow you for the quality of your artwork each time they click on a post. So the feed doesn't, I don't think about that at all when I'm posting. But the other part is, I think, really interesting is like, do you want to cater to the people, or do you want to draw what you actually really want to draw? Like, I think there's always a balancing act there when you're doing anything for social media, because you always got to, like, at the back of your head, you got to think, okay, you know, is this gonna like alienate my entire audience? Is this gonna be in line with the kind of theme that I've set up for myself on my page? And it's always a balancing act, right, between that and how much you actually want to like explore the things that you're genuinely interested in.
All right, here's an important question. This one comes from Renaissance Girl, and this is especially important to our social media team, Pam and Elizabeth and Shireen, who are behind the scenes watching this. How could you please ask Sam how you deal with mean people on social media, like cyberbullies, trolls, etc.?
Yeah, well, this is a good way to think about this. I think I've gotten like some nasty YouTube comments in the past, but like, instead of letting that get to you, you just gotta understand that that's just another person behind their computer, and they might be having a very bad day, or they might not be happy with where they are in life. So they're taking it out on you, and you're obviously just this creator, this person who is not, physically there in front of them, and they don't really understand that you're actually a human being behind the screen too. So they're just taking it out on you. So really, it's not like anything that you should take personally. In fact, you should just understand that that's somebody who doesn't like where they are in life, and they're trying to take it out on other people, and it's really not worth your time and effort to pay that any attention. Obviously, it's hard, right? Sometimes you get a comment, you're like, you start thinking about it for a little while. It happens to me too, but at the end of the day, that's just somebody who's not happy with their position, and you have to understand that it's nothing to do with you.
All right. Izudin Kamarudin says, how do you finally decide on the genre of your art? I have an interest in different genres, but it seems that focusing on one is much better. Any advice?
Just try the different ones. I think, try them all out and see what really speaks to you. I think there's no point where you really decide, okay, I'm going to do this from now on. You kind of just fall into like this pattern, this rhythm of doing things, and then you're like, oh, I guess I'm doing this now. It's something that should come really naturally once you try all the different things.
All right. This is a great question from Leilani. Can you ask him, okay, Leilani, here we go. How do you study another artist's work without completely copying their style?
Well, I mean, like what I like to do is I take certain aspects of their work, right? So for example, I'm looking at an artist and I'm like, wow, I love the simplicity in your rendering. I could just take that from you, but I'm not necessarily taking the way that you proportion your characters. I'm not necessarily taking the way that you paint your backgrounds or whatever. I'm just taking that one aspect of simplicity in your rendering. And for example, if you like an artist that like the way they stylize their faces, you could just take the proportional cues from them and try it yourself. And if it ends up looking too similar, probably either give them credit when you post it online, or just keep it to yourself. But just try to take like one specific element that you really like, one or two, and not try to do everything the way they do.
Okay, Hanley has a great question. I know a lot of people have this question. Which programmed shortcut keys do you use, and where do you put them?
Program shortcut keys. To be honest with you, I don't really program my own shortcut keys. I just use the base ones on Photoshop. I think it's something that I just got used to. I don't want to have to relearn things. I don't want to have to relearn the muscle memory that it's already in my hand. So I just go with the base ones in Photoshop, and like Procreate, whatever I'm working on, I just go with the base ones. I think they're the default ones for a reason. Yeah, so I just use those.
Do you have some favorite brushes you want to recommend?
Oh my goodness, the round brush, guys. The basic round brush. This is my absolute all-time favorite brush because it's just so versatile. Like you can get some beautiful blending with the basic round brush, but you could also like do some really crazy fine details. You could turn on the opacity. You could create a whole different vibe with the brush. It's the most versatile brush, and people always try to get away from the basic round brush because it's like one of the most basic default ones, but it's the default one for a reason, guys. It's really good.
Sam, we committed to taking up just an hour of your time, and we have 4 minutes left.
Okay.
I can suspect that the chat is going crazy right now and wants to extend this a little bit longer. Do you have a few more minutes for them?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, cool. All right, we'll ask another handful of questions then. I have seen a lot of questions about improving art skills and learning the fundamentals. Can you take those in two questions? First of all, how do you learn the fundamentals? And secondly, where do you go to keep improving your skills?
Learning the fundamentals is I think there are a lot of resources out there. I know like there's big guys like Proco, who They put a lot of videos on YouTube covering the fundamentals, and I think information on the basics is very easy to find. So for the fundamentals, like the thing with that is you gotta practice that through a lot of repetition, right? You don't want to get too ahead of yourself and try to do too much too soon. I remember when I was learning art when I was a little bit younger, it was just a constant repetition of painting still lifes, you know, rendering in graphite, just black and white. And it was just a lot of repetition, making sure that I got everything down, and it just becomes second nature. So fundamentals, repetition is really important, and you can find a lot of resources online. And improving your own skills, I think, like I said before, you really just got to challenge yourself, right? Whenever you make a painting that you're like, I'm not really feeling this one, you know, you got to ask yourself, okay, why am I not feeling this one? You know, what is it about this that I don't like? And you might be like, okay, it's the eyes of the character that I'm not really liking. So what's wrong with the eyes? You know, just turn it into something productive and try to focus on that one thing and try to study that one thing and try to target your weaknesses, basically, I think is the best way to actually improve your skills.
So Carmen has a question. Carmen Wong has a question related to this and practicing. So she says, how do we improve when it comes to drawing human anatomy, figure pose, legs, hands, etc.? There is a point when it becomes boring. Any tips on improving? So kind of how do you push through that boring moment of practice?
Uh, the boringness is hard to deal with. I think if something gets boring to you, I wouldn't recommend necessarily like just hard nose pushing through it and just saying like I got no excuse, I gotta do this, because then you know you're gonna lose your passion for doing it. You could try to find ways to make it fun. You know, maybe you could come up with like little challenges for yourself, or if you have friends who also would like to learn the same thing, you know, you could come up with like a little challenge. You know, maybe try to do hold each other accountable and try to do like 1 10-minute study a day or something like that, and then show each other, and then you know just do something fun, do something a little bit different instead of just head down and grind. Because if it gets boring and it gets repetitive, it's going to kill your passion a little bit.
Taylor is asking about staying motivated. So they are saying, how do you stay motivated as a beginner artist if you don't get much attention from the Instagram audience? And then were you ever demotivated in your art at some point?
Uh, yeah, I think staying motivated as a beginner, like like I said before in the video, you got to do it for yourself, right? The motivation comes from, you know, understanding that like where are you trying to get to with this, right? Set a goal for yourself, understand that this is where I want to be in 5 years, that this is where I want to take my skills. These are the things that I want to learn. These are the things that I want to be able to do. So that's I think a good way to keep your motivation, and also look at other artists, right? Look at what other people are doing, and see how you could try to replicate what they're doing too. And I've definitely felt unmotivated in the past with art, especially like towards the beginning stages when I wasn't getting too much attention. But I think the point of it is really to just do this thing for yourself and see how far you can take your skill set, see how much you can actually improve. That's the best way to actually stay motivated.
Okay, here's a question back to the practical nature of growing an audience on social. Would you recommend paying for software to help with scheduling, posts, analytics, and hashtags for Instagram?
100% not, because I don't like it. Really doesn't take that long for you to schedule your own post. You know, you just put it up as a draft and then set an alarm for a specific time, and then just go on there and click share. And analytics is something that like I'm aware of it. I try to stay aware of how my page is doing, but I actually don't like read too much into it. Even on YouTube, Instagram, both of them, I try to not read too much into it, because if you dive too deep into that, it's very easy for you to fall into like the line of thinking of like, okay, what am I doing here? What am I doing there? And then you start letting that take more importance than the content you're creating.
Here's a question. Do you have a question you wish to be asked but haven't been asked yet?
Oh, um, This is funny. Like I remember we did a Q&A video on my YouTube channel and somebody asked this exact question. I was like, my answer was I wish to be asked on a date, but
Oh, okay.
no, but like I don't know. I don't really have a question that I think no, not really. You guys have good questions.
I know the chat's been going crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I will ask you a question then.
Cool.
What is your favorite drawing prompt to offer people?
Drawing prompt?
Yeah, like let's say you have a blank screen and you don't know what to do. What do you tell people to get them moving their pen?
Um, it could go one of two ways. So one thing, one way is like a more technical way. So what is something that you're not super confident with? You know, what is it? Hands? Is it faces? Is it anatomy? Practice that. Put that on your canvas. The other one's more like, you know, emotional. So you could, if you're really lacking motivation, well, think of a like a happy memory, whether it could be a happy memory or a sad memory or like a nostalgic thing. Think of that feeling. Try to put it on the canvas in a scene. You know, that's a more emotional version of that. Yeah, that's my drawing prompt.
All right, Sam, this is going to be the last question, and then we're going to send everybody on their way to their next Lightbox Expo event. Ready?
Yep.
What is the one tip people need to focus on in order to improve their career in art?
The one tip. The
One tip.
The one tip. I want to say it's a hard toss up between the two, so I'm just going to combine them. It's consistency and focusing on your skills. So consistency meaning that you gotta stick to a schedule. You gotta stay on top of things, you know. And like I said in the video, if the schedule becomes not manageable, then change your schedule. But you want to make sure that you hold yourself accountable so that you're doing the things that you need to do to succeed, so you're not slacking off. And the other part is, you know, obviously focusing on your skills. So don't let the other distractions of analytics and stuff like that take precedent over your own actual personal development. That's two combined into one.
We'll take it. Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you for spending this hour with us. We will wrap it up then. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. And thank you to the Wacom team for having me here. It's been really fun, guys.